Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox, where we talk about all things Xbox. And on today's agenda is a review of the Xbox 360 game Call of Duty 2, which was a launch title for the Xbox 360 October 2nd, 2005. It was published by Activision and developed by Infinity Ward. Call of Duty 2 is the sequel to the award-winning Call of Duty and represents Call of Duty as an evolving first-person shooter before Call of Duty became the worldwide phenomenon that it is today. Call of Duty goes all the way back 17 entries from now, so there have been 17 brand new games since then, and it's really interesting to go back 17 years ago and delve into Call of Duty 2. Call of Duty is a war franchise, and now it mostly explores Modern Warfare or Black Ops, but only sometimes goes back to World War II. But there was a time when Call of Duty was just known as a World War II franchise. In Call of Duty 2, it explores all the fronts of the war, the history of it, and iconic battles. First-person shooters based in World War II were insanely popular in the early to mid-2000s. So much so that there was a crazy inundation of them. And a lot of people really enjoyed them, but critics of the time and certain people were starting to get a little tired of them. Yet, the first Call of Duty game was a huge success and won tons of awards and did a lot of groundbreaking things. And Call of Duty 2 had a lot to live up to at its release, but actually does a great job of improving on some gameplay elements, and it felt surprisingly fresh at the time, and it has mainstays that are still a part of first-person shooter games to this day. First-person shooter games are some of my favorite games. You just go around and you shoot enemies. It's quite simple, and I love the simplicity of a first-person shooter, and I think here it's one of its strongest suits. You really can just pick up Call of Duty 2 and you get some quick and easy action, and you'll have a good time with it. You have an arsenal of old school weapons and grenades. It feels really good to play. One of the innovations that this game delivers is a lot of first-person shooters before this, you had health packs for you to pick up and refill your health. It was actually that way in the first Call of Duty. And it was very rarely you saw games with refilling health, like Halo 2 is one of those games. But this one does one of the most common methods now, which is as you get shot, blood fills the screen, and that signifies that your health is going away and you need to hide to get your health up. Now, this sounds really standard for now, but this really was different for the time and actually was a highly praised portion of the game. It got rid of the tedium of hunting down health packs and allowed you to keep the action rolling. Another thing that is a great indicator is the grenade icon. Whenever the enemy chucks a grenade at you, it'll notify you where the grenade is on the ground so you can run away and escape death. It was a really simple addition that changed a lot of first-person gaming for the better. So one of my favorite things about doing Camp Xbox and playing all these older games is I love comparing it to how games play now. I love seeing how these games have changed the future of gaming, and I really love delving into these games and thinking about the historical context as well. Because you will see a lot of people put down an older game just because it doesn't play correctly or it doesn't fit modern standards for games, but there's just something about putting yourself in the time period and really sinking into what gamers were doing then. And I think on this game, you really can see it as a standard turning point for the genre. And it really helps understand why it was a beloved game in its time with historical context. I think this game might feel a little dull or standard for now if you went back to it at this time. But it's small innovations like what I just mentioned a few moments ago that helps me appreciate this game and what it did for a lot of gaming afterwards. Nowadays, it's so easy to dismiss Call of Duty as we get an entry every single year. But at the beginning of the franchise, it was just starting and full of potential and change. Gameplay-wise, I still think this is a strong entry. I still think it is a great playing first-person shooter. The controls are spot on. It all feels excellent, and running around these maps is a lot of fun. It has this quick burst kind of energy that made these games so popular in the first place. One of the elements that I really like about this game is the story and level design variety. You go through this going through different conflicts. You play as the British, the Russians, and American soldiers. You get snowy terrain, desert terrain, and woodlands. And I think for this time, it looks nice. I know looking at this now, compared to some of the later Xbox 360 games, it might not look as good, but that generation of gaming, the graphics upgraded almost every year. Games were topping each other over and over. But I think Call of Duty 2, out of the first rollout of 360 games, is one of the better looking games. I think the battlefields feel plenty big, and I really like the interior work on a lot of these battlefields. A lot of these interiors are highly detailed with small things like furniture, carpets, and pictures. It may feel small scale and walled off at times, which is one negative I have. I think some levels needed to be a little more open, but there are some levels that are really tight, compact, and I can actually really appreciate how easy they are to navigate. So my biggest issue with this Call of Duty is the respawning of enemies, and this happens a lot in earlier Call of Duties. So you fight a lot in tight areas, and it expects you to move up to stop enemy flow. So what this means is you don't have a finite amount of enemies. You kill 3 enemies and then you get to move up because you killed everybody. No, in this you have to keep killing. Otherwise they're going to keep piling in and you're just going to get a ton of enemies. And the only way to stop enemies is to get up to the next cover. And why I don't like this is sometimes it feels like you're just in an endless loop of killing over and over and you've made no progress. It's not a lot of fun at times when you can't get up to the next cover, especially when you play this game on veteran difficulty. And let me tell you, this difficulty is not for people who get easily angry at games. You will die, and you have to be extremely strategic on how you traverse these levels. Only a few shots take you down, and the enemies are relentless. They will keep running and gunning at you. I think it definitely takes off some points just for this style of respawning, and I don't really recommend Veteran unless you are really into beating these games on the hardest difficulty. I think it's better to play on something like Normal, which is a bit more manageable. The sound here is excellent, and I still think it holds up to this day. The sounds of bullets whizzing by and explosions right into the side of your ear. You hear other troops yelling, and it captures the war is hell mood in a perfect way. And match this with a beautiful original soundtrack that feels like the typical warfare marching mood, but it gives it this historical documentary feel, which is why I love this generation of war games, because you get actual documentary footage and explanation of the battles before you go in. And if you know me from this channel, I am a history fan. I love looking back at history, and I always found these segments interesting to me. The story itself, other than the war stuff, is pretty forgettable though. It has some fun moments, but I wouldn't say it reaches the heights that would come later from Call of Duty's Modern Warfare. More or less, it just kind of gives context to some cool action scenes. And one of the biggest things about Call of Duty is the online, and this one has Call of Duty Online, but it is super simple. It's not what you'd expect from the later entries. You just kind of run around and shoot at some enemies in fun maps. It's not as lively of a community as some of the older Call of Duties, because if you go back to like Modern Warfare, there's still people playing those, but there isn't many people here, and I think that's because there's not much in the way of progression hooks, leveling, but it's fun to pop into even in 2022. So personally, I found this Call of Duty to be an enjoyable one. It is a little dated for now, and it may seem a little run-of-the-mill, but I found it to be interesting as an innovative first-person shooter, and it's fun to look at it now as a trendsetter. I can't say I'd replay this one after I've just gone through and beat it, but it's a fun game to come back to and is backwards compatible on all modern Xboxes, so if you have any sort of interest, you should definitely check it out. And on my Xbox 360 ranking list, I am going to throw Call of Duty 2 at number 6. I think Stranglehold is a lot cooler of a game and has a lot more interesting things going on, but it is loads better than Dark Void. And I think that about wraps it up for this review of Call of Duty 2. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, give it a like, and if you're not subscribed already, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get updated whenever I do upload a new review. I do love doing these, and if you have any Call of Duty 2 memories, put it down in the comments below. I would love to hear about them. I love communicating with you guys. It really helps motivate me to make more videos. And I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.